Could you get rid of the agenda too?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good on the agenda.
Yeah, just for the record, to be clear, the motion was to approve the agenda and table item 6B for review by the Predator Committee with the recommendation back to the Commission.
Thank you. Member items and announcements. Commissioner Macbeth.
Two days ago, the wildlife community was shocked by the announcement by Governor Sandoval of the requesting the resignation of Ken Mayer as Director of Nevada Department of Wildlife. I don't really have any comments at this time because I have a lot of unanswered questions I don't understand, but I did want to make a statement. I was appointed to the Wildlife Commission almost 5 years ago by Governor Gibbons. Like many appointees who do not have a science or wildlife management background, I had formed certain beliefs and assumptions as to wildlife. What I quickly learned was that NDOW was staffed with a dedicated group of wildlife biologists, game wardens, administrative staff, unquestionably committed to the management of Nevada's wildlife resource. NDOW's management of wildlife is firmly grounded in the wildlife and range sciences. Not surprisingly, Nevada law requires that NDOW's director be a person having an academic degree in management of wildlife or a closely related field. Not long before my appointment, Ken Mayer had been appointed as director of NDOW. I am not sure if he knew what he was getting into, but it did not take long to find out. What was going to be put to the test was NDOW's commitment to the management of wildlife based on science. What I have witnessed in NDOW's employees is the unwavering commitment to the management of Nevada's wildlife resource based on science. However, NDOW's management of wildlife has not been without great controversy where science meets headlong into the deeply rooted common beliefs and understandings regarding wildlife. The person in the crosshairs was the director of NDOW, Ken Mayer, who as the top administrator of the agency is tasked with managing Nevada's wildlife in a political arena where different interest groups seek to influence wildlife management based on their sometimes vastly different value structures. It's a monumental task fraught with risks for the director. What I witnessed in Ken Mayer was a steadfast commitment to the management of Nevada's wildlife resource based on science. Ken's management style was to engage and listen to his employees and make decisions on the management of wildlife that did not always sit well with certain groups. Ken earned the respect of his employees and his peers, as well as sportsmen and conservationists in Nevada and throughout the country. Ken led NDOW down this path in the face of relentless pressure from critics and risk to himself. While Ken leaves as director of NDOW, there is one thing that he takes with him that is solidly intact. That is his reputation and credibility as one of our country's most premier wildlife management professionals. And in the end, when we go to our grave, the only thing all of us can take with us is our reputation and our credibility. I know that Ken will do well in his future endeavors. Ken has been a consummate professional, and I am honored to say that he is my friend. Ken, I wish you well.
Any other member items? Commissioner Ring.
On a totally separate subject, because I'm not going to delve upon criticizing the governor's decisions in any way. Never have, never will. Money in a wood ducks, a piece of information somebody brought to me that perhaps staff could look at and bring back to our next meeting. And, you know, I didn't have an answer. Was one, in NRS 502.300, we're talking about the duck stamp money. Money must be used for projects for the protection and propagation of migratory game birds, and yet in our study it states several times that the wood ducks are relatively sedentary, encountered 12 months out of the year. Do they or do they not qualify as under that NRS? And if somebody researched that and may bring that back to the next meeting and then trying to answer that straight off, would appreciate it. Because I didn't really have an answer for it. That was one thing somebody brought forward. Another one was that, let's see, I had several letters I'd like to acknowledge that are going to be applicable to this meeting. Basically, I just want to repeat what I said in the last meeting about I'd received many pieces of correspondence about the hound bear issue at the previous meeting, and also at prior meetings before that over the past roughly 3 years, and I've tried to read over every one of them I can, and I believe I read about every one of them that came before me, and there was quite a few on that particular subject. So I'd like to re-acknowledge the ones that came up last meeting and these new ones. We did get quite a few without repeating all of them. Also, I believe the Commission got a copy of a letter from Assemblyman or former Assemblyman Carpenter about some displeasure with the Wildlife Predation Management Plan. And he has brought this forward to the Commission at times in different aspects. This was a letter to the Governor of the state of Nevada, repeating that he was in the Assembly, but I shouldn't put my words. I was in the Assembly for 24 years and very active in regard to the natural resources issue. During 2001 session, Assembly Clerk Jerry Claiborne and I led an effort to enact AB 291. AB 291 imposed an additional $3 fee for the processing of each game application for a game tag. Excuse me. The $3 fee was to be used primarily for predation control. The legislation received unanimous approval in both the Assembly and the Senate. And I believe Mr. Claiborne was on the Democratic side, and I believe Mr. Carpenter was on the Republican side. So it was a bipartisan issue as far as that came forward. I believe the Nevada Department, that was my words, not his, the last statement. Back to his letter. I believe the Nevada Department of Wildlife is sabotaging the intent of AB 291, which is now statute as NRS 502.253. The recent predation management plan of half the money is being diverted to questionable studies rather than being used for on-the-ground predation management. The department wants to fund 3 studies. One of the studies titled Coyote Ecology Study. The cost of the study would be $100,000. Coyote has been studied very extensively since the early 1970s. In fact, there are over 40 pieces of literature cited which detailed studies which have already been done on coyotes, in which this study would only duplicate those studies already done. This study is unwarranted and a huge waste of money, especially $3 money. To further explain why this study should not be done, I refer to the legislation as passed by the legislature and its present wording. In the NDOW plan, there is what is referred to as executive summary, which purports to have the same meaning as NRS 502.253. Subsection 1C of that NRS reads as follows: conducting research as needed to determine successful techniques for managing and controlling predatory wildlife, including studies necessary to ensure effective programs for the management and control of injurious predatory wildlife. The executive summary conveniently leaves out the words "as needed." Also the phrase which states "including studies necessary," quotes, to ensure effective programs for the management and control of injurious predatory wildlife. And I'll skip over some for length, but Section 3 of NRS 502.253 states any program developed or wildlife management activity or research conducted pursuant to the subsection must be developed or conducted under the guidance of the Commission pursuant to subsection 2 NRS 501.181. Continues on into that and ends with the only way to get to a positive mode in regard to increasing the deer herd and keeping sage grouse off the endangered species list is for the governor to relieve Ken Mayer of his position and choose someone who can work with all parties on a cooperative and positive note. It has a PS and some things. I'd like to make sure that this is included in the minutes of this meeting, the full text. I believe that Suzanne has a copy of that, so that can be put into the minutes. If you don't, please get with me and I'll make sure that is in there. I also received a piece of correspondence that came out about the time of our December meeting, and that was from a Mr. Gardner, and he'd been asking now multiple times, several questions from the Department of Wildlife about the utilization of funds and the different facts. I don't know if Department of Wildlife should be fairly familiar with his things, but he keeps telling us that he has never been, there's been no response to him. And he's got some really interesting data. And I'd like to make sure that the full text of his letter, and I have a copy of that here I can supply for later, is entered into the record and into the minutes of this meeting for review and the distribution of all materials for this meeting. That's all I have till tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other Commissioner Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During my time on this commission, Ken Mayer is the director of Van Dow, so I don't, in my experience with being on the commission, I never dealt with anyone else but Ken Mayer as the director. During that time, I've developed a very valuable relationship with him in my mind. Whether we agreed or disagreed on subjects, whether I had questions that I needed answered, I always felt that I could call and talk to him and we could try to iron things out or get more information and come up with some type of a sensible solution to whatever we were facing. And an example of my relationship, my experience with Director Mayer is last summer we had a wildfire, which we know the impacts of wildfires to our wildlife, sage grouse, particularly mule deer, all wildlife in general. And I missed the commission meeting in Winnemucca because I was on that fire. So during that time, like the next day after that fire, I called him up and I said, hey, if you want to know about the impacts of wildfire to wildlife habitat, you might want to get up here right now while it's fresh in everybody's mind and the embers are still smoldering. Might be a good idea to get in here and look around. In 3 days, he was there with staff. And so that's the type of relationship that means a lot to me. And I just want to tell you, Ken, that I appreciate it. And I know that we have to move on, and I'm looking forward to the same type of relationship with the next director. But I just want you to know that I appreciate your service. Thank you.
Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, I won't take a lot of time, and Commissioners Macbeth and Mora, I think, have summarized some key points really well, but I guess the short and sweet version of it is, Ken, we sure appreciate all you've done for Nevada's wildlife, and on a personal level, I appreciate what you've done for me. So thank you for the years of service.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my very short tenure, Ken, I too echo the comments of the other commissioners. It's been a pleasure working with you. I can tell you're a consummate professional. I've worked around a lot of professional people in my field, and you're right there with all of them, and we're going to miss you, and good luck in the future. Thank you.
Commissioner Lane.
I would agree with all those comments, and I wish you the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Any other commission comments? Seeing none, we'll go on to the